Now that we have Drupal installed, we're going to start digging pretty deeply into individual points in its interface. But first, let's get an overview of the region's map before we visit those individual villages of control. As I said in the video about the toolbar, you can get to just about every administrative screen through this black bar at the top. One thing you probably noticed when you clicked it is that the screen sort of freezes and puts the controls over what you are looking at. That's called the administrative overlay, and it's new in Drupal 7. As you can see, our original site is still back here, even as we scroll through this overlay. There are a few features of things that you see in the overlay. First of all, over here you'll see what's called a breadcrumb trail. As we click further into the administrative interface, it gets longer and longer. If you ever get lost, you can sort of back out and see one level above. It's sort of like being in a file folder and looking above to the higher level and then above again. Another feature is that some of these screens have tabs over here. So for appearance, for example, not only can you see a list of all the themes you have installed, you can also update them or change the settings that affect all of them. While we're there, that's a good time to point out these sub-tabs which sometimes show up in the overlay. Here we have Global Settings, Bartik, and 7. One more thing I want to point out about the administrative overlay, which is the URL up here in the browser's address bar. The first part, up to the £, is what you see underneath the overlay. That is the page that you were on before you clicked one of those links. Then you see $overlay equals, and then you see the rest of the URL. If you want to see this page without the thing underneath it, all you would do is delete that $overlay equals, and then hit return. And there it is. If you get in at this point and you want to go back to seeing the overlay, you can't really do that by just clicking around on these administrative links. Instead, you have to go back home or to a content page and then start clicking around again, and the administrative overlay will come back up. Incidentally, you can turn off this administrative overlay entirely if you like by clicking Modules and scrolling down to Overlay, unchecking that box and scrolling down and saying Save Configuration. You'll learn more about how to use this screen, by the way, in the section on extending Drupal's functionality. But let's get back to our links up here at the top. The first one is the dashboard. The dashboard is a very customizable screen which lets you change how you administer Drupal. For example, we could move recent comments down here, and then when we say Done, when we have comments on the site, they'll be listed here whenever we go to the dashboard. I'm going to go ahead and drag that back out, though, and click Done. We'll talk about that in a video about customizing the dashboard. Then we go on to content. We don't have any content on the site yet, but when we do, it'll all be listed here and we'll be able to sort it by title, type, or any of these other criteria. We'll also be able to perform mass functions on them, such as publishing or unpublishing all of them. And we can filter the list, as you can see from the filters up here. We'll talk about this more in the section on content. Structure and configuration are both lists of links, and this is where you get at most of the power of Drupal. We'll go into these individual links throughout the rest of the course. I already mentioned the appearance screen. We'll talk about this in greater detail in the section about changing a site's interface. The people screen, which also includes the important permissions tab, we talk about in the section Managing Users. I already mentioned modules, and again, we'll talk more about that in the section about expanding a site's capabilities. Finally, we have reports, which allow you to monitor what happens on your site, and help, which brings you to text-based information that'll help you through all of this. Finally, I want to reiterate that Drupal is a multi-user system. We've been looking at this site from the point of view of the super user. That is the person who was set up when you initially installed Drupal. That person has control to everything in the site. You can determine if that's you by clicking on your link up here or here to My Account, and then clicking Edit. If it shows you as user/1, then you are the super user. But if you're not that person, if, for example, you're working on someone else's site, you might be an administrator who only has access to some of the features that you'll learn about in this course. So don't worry if you find that a control is missing from your interface. Just contact the person in charge of the site to make sure that you have access to all of the things that you should.